Hello, everyone. My name is Papillon Little. I am the K-5 Science Coordinator for Atlanta Public Schools, and today I will be talking to you about STEMscopes. STEMscopes is a resource that not some, but not all of our Atlanta Public Schools, elementary schools, a lot of middle schools, and a lot of high schools have purchased the resource in regards to science. We refer to it as a digital resource, but it also could be looked at as a digital textbook. So, what we're going to do is kind of go through some different features that you might have in STEM scopes. So, we're going to get started. The first thing with STEM scopes is that you want to access it through My Backpack. Um, I've already clicked on the different icons in my backpack to get to the home screen. And so once you go through your My Backpack page, you should see a similar home screen to this one. All right, once you go into it, you'll see your name as the teacher. Uh, One of the first places that I would suggest going is to your scopes from the home page if you have never used them scopes. So I'm gonna click on that. All right, so once you go into your scopes, you're going to see different grade levels that you can filter to: kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, fifth. And then also, if you're middle or high school, you will also have your grade levels that you can actually filter to or subject areas. So I'm just going to click on one. This is kindergarten day and night sky. So once you click on that scope, it's going to open up. Once it opens up, you're going to have all of the resources that you will basically need in order to teach a science lesson based on that standard. So on the first page, you are going to see let me go down. You're gonna see student wondering phenomenon, which is gonna be the phenomenon that you start with. We always want to start with the phenomenon. You're gonna have your key concepts, and then you're also gonna have your driving questions, which they call refer to as fundamental questions. You will also see over here on the side where you have your standards alignments. These are aligned to the Georgia Standards of Excellence, so that makes it awesome. It's also going to show how the standards are aligned to the teaching, so it's kind of a deconstruction of the standards. Then you have your teacher background. Your teacher background is really good for teachers who may be teaching at a different grade level for the year. Maybe you were a fifth grade teacher last year, and now you have to teach kindergarten. So you want to get some background on what the students are supposed to learn in kindergarten compared to maybe what they were learning in a higher grade level. So teacher background is good, and vice versa. If you're going from, let's say, a kindergarten class to teaching a fifth grade class, if you want to know what they're learning on that level. You also have your materials list for all the materials that you would need for each one of the five E's, and then you also have your answer keys. Now, up here at the top, this is also the home tab for the scope, this scope in particular. But this STEM Scopes follows the 5E learning model, and so you'll see where you have your engage activities, your explore, your explain, elaborate, and then your evaluate. At the end, we'll talk about the intervention and acceleration activities that you can utilize. So we will start with the engage activities. Here, I just clicked on that scope. All of those engage activities have opened up. It's almost like a lesson plan. Basically, it tells you everything that you will need to do as the teacher. It gives you information in regards to what materials you will need, and also with STEM schools, a lot of schools that order STEM schools, as far as the digital resource or the digital platform, they also have kits that accompany them. So you probably have access to the kits at your school. A lot of times we find them in the labs if you may not be sure that you have access. But I would ask somebody who is probably a science leader at your school if there were kits that were ordered, because there are kits and materials that go along with these. All right, so here on the right side you have a couple of things that you can do. You can actually add to planner, and so it's similar to a calendar invite. So a lot of people who use Microsoft Outlook, they use the calendar to plan out their day. Was the same thing with STEM scopes. You can do that also. So I'm just going to use this as an example. So I'm just going to put a start date, and we'll go back to the plan after I go through each one of these sections, and we'll just go March the 2nd. And then I even say that this will be a 2-day thing. So we'll just put add element to planner. All right. All right. And so it should be there, but we'll go back and double check. So that's your engage activity, and then you have your explore activity. Now, the majority of the time with your explore activities, these are going to be investigations that students are going to complete based on the content. And so, if it's in person, of course, you know that the students will be working in groups in order to complete these investigations. Um, if it's digital, a lot of times these can be completed in various different ways. You just have to kind of be creative with them. On the side, you have files that you can print, and so here you have the student guide for the students. Here you have you basically have like the different worksheets or the cards that go with the actual activity, and then you have a student journal, and you have a sample answer, which is basically some answers that students might provide. So all of your resources are going to be here on the right for this activity, um, and that's available to you under the Explore tab. You can also do the same thing here where you can actually add to planners. So just say, for instance, if I wanted to add this, let's say for the 7th, and then the end date is, let's just say, we'll say the 7th. So we'll just add that to the planner. It should be added. And then if you wanted to view, if you wanted to see how the students would view this digitally, so if you assign this to the students, you want to see how they would see it. This is how they would actually see it when it comes to their computers. And as I mentioned, you can actually, the good thing about STEMscopes is that you can assign assignments to the students in the platform. So here is where you can actually go to assign to the students. So really quickly, I'm just going to click on it. Now the thing is that I don't have any students to assign this to, so I won't really go down this process. But if you have students that are linked to you in Infinite Campus, you have the ability to assign an assignment to those students based on the ones that are on your row based on Infinite Campus. All right, so that's your Explore tab. Here is your Explain tab, and so if you click on your Explain tab, as I mentioned earlier, this is a lot like your digital textbook. So you have question prompts, which can be questions that you're asking when they're going through their reading. You also have picture vocabulary, so I'll just click on that just to show you that with your picture vocabulary, you can show it to them, the students, digitally, or you can actually print them out here. And then you can also show them this if you want to show them digitally also. So say for instance, if you just wanted to make it a lot larger, then you could, but these are printables. So you have access to those. But then also, as I mentioned with the digital textbook, that's going to be your STEMscopedia. And with your STEMscope, let me make that larger. With your STEMscopedia, here is basically is your digital textbook. So the nonfiction text that your students would be reading, this is what they would read. Now, you also have a student handout that you can download so that you can see what it would look like. It would look similar to what we did with the picture cards. It would be on the PDF, but you have access to that. And then you also have an answer key for the questions that they ask. Now, you also have, a lot of times, you will have a video that accompanies a scope to add with that non-fiction text. And so this one here is Things in the Sky. And then you also have, at times, the majority of the times, you're going to have a literacy connection. And so these are different resources that you can use to make literacy integrations. So they've actually expanded on that over the years. Here's another video, and it's another content connections video. And this one actually has questions that goes along with it, so you can utilize that. And then you have persuasive speeches. This is another literacy connection. All right. And so now we go over to our elaborate. And so with the elaborate, A lot of times that's a way that you can actually bring in differentiated instruction activities. You can do extension, or you can do interventions during the elaborate time. But here is a lot of different ELA resources, math connections that you can put. So here's one activity that students could do as a center activity. Here's another activity that students can do as a center activity, and this is a math activity. And then this is usually a good resource for schools that might be IB centered, but you still have STEMscopes. This is one way that you can actually prompt student inquiry. And so this is called next step inquiry. This is something that could be an extension activity and add it to IB. And then they also show how you can make connections to careers in science. So that's just the video. And then some, and not all, but some are going to have science today. They're either going to be videos or they're going to be writing activities, prompts, things like that. And so the last thing that you'll have in the 5E is the evaluate. So here you have a couple of evaluation tools. You have a concept review game, and this is something that you can do whole group, or you can assign it to the student so that you see how they do individually. You have a multiple choice assessment. A lot of people who have STEMscopes may be familiar with the assessments, and then you can also create an assessment on your own. You also have claim, evidence, and reasoning. With your claim, evidence, and reasoning, I know that it comes in the evaluate, but this is something that you can also do as a pre-assessment, or you can do this, have the students actually make the claims in the beginning at the engage, and therefore when they go throughout each part of the ease, the explore, the explain, the elaborate, by the time they get to the evaluate, they have collected enough evidence to provide a reason to why their claim was correct or might need some revisions. All right, and then you also have writing science, which is a ELA connection. All right. And then here you also have, so this is outside of the 5E, but this is something that I would probably suggest that you can put into maybe your elaborate activities. You have intervention activities, and here's just an example of one. And like I said, you could do this as a group and during the elaborate. And you can also print the files here. Anything that you need to print is going to be over here on the right. And then here you have acceleration activities. A lot of times these are going to be STEAM based, so science, art activities. All right. And so once you go inside of the scope, those are going to be the majority of the things that you see. So I'm going to go back to the scopes page, because before I leave, I want you to see what's in the teacher toolbox. So if you click on the teacher toolbox here, you have more resources. So speaking of resources, here you have different science-based resources that you can use. If you look at the bottom, you see safety posters that talk about safety equipment. When we talk about tools of inquiry, all of those are in the resources boxes. Here, when we're talking about interventions, you can we can talk about educational interventions that you'll find on the scopes, but then you also have things as far as like the whole child that are located in the interventions tab. And then you have where you can also make literacy connections inside the scopes, but then you also have literacy resources that's inside the teacher toolbox that you can utilize. The next thing is going to be your nature of science, and so you can find your grade level, and you can actually find some really good resources under each one of those. And then one of the last things is the interactive. So with the interactives, these are things, resources that you can use. They're somewhat games that you can do as a whole group, because you can assign them to the students. So I'll just show you an example of one. All right. And so if you look here, this is magnets. So say for instance, in fifth grade, the students go, they actually learn about magnets. So this is something that maybe could be integrated into that learning. So as you can see, you can't assign these to the students. You can only add it to your planner. So what you would do is you would probably do this as a you would do this as a whole group. All right, and then you have your science in the world, and so here you have different types of career connections. Like I mentioned earlier, the ones that you saw inside the scope, you can find different ones if you want to bring in different ones just to discuss. All right, and so I am going to go back to the home page, and so here from the home page, I will show you the planner, which is the first tab. If you remember, when I was going through the scopes, I was assigning assignments to the students, or what, not assigning assignments to the students. I was actually putting assignments in the planner. And so once you put it in the planner, it's just similar to your Outlook calendar. It's just basically going to show when you're going to cover it and the time limit. So that first assignment was going to be for 2 days. The second one was going to be for 1 day. It's going to show you the date that it's going to be on. All right. And so with this tab, streaming and coding, those two tabs are going to be based off of if your school purchased those two particular resources. Is not something that comes for free. It's an extra cost. All right. Now, when you look at the standards, of course, you will see that it's aligned to the Georgia Standards of Excellence. So that's awesome. And you will literally find your grade level, and you can find the different scopes that they align to. And as I mentioned, it doesn't matter if you are a elementary school teacher or a secondary teacher. You can see all of the standards connections in STEMscopes. All right. Now, with the students tab, a lot of times we get asked questions about how do we add students to, how do you add students to a class? And so here, if you, it should automatically add the students from Infinite Campus. So based on whoever is listed under your class in Infinite Campus should already be rostered in STEMscopes. But if by any chance, if you had to add a section or add a class, then you could. So you just click on add a section, and then you basically just follow the steps. I'm not going to do it in this one in particular, but I will say that once this is filled out, you will get a list of all the students that are at your school, and you can just add the students from there. All right. And so then one of the last things that we will look at today is going to be the assessments tab. So say for instance, you want to give another test that you want to create using STEMscopes questions. So it could be something as similar as a unit assessment, or if you just wanted to make a school-based benchmark, then you can actually pull those questions. So it's gonna ask you if you want to make it print, if you want digital, if you want to do both. I just stick with digital right now. And so from here, what you would do is you basically would put the assessment name, and you can actually select the questions that you want, and then it will populate over here to the right. Once you select the questions, then what you can do is you can create the assessment once you have the name for it and everything. And so then that's something that you can use as a resource as far as creating assessment questions. All right. And so now I'm gonna go back to the home page, and this will be the page that you would see in the beginning. If you ever had to go back to a page, or if you ever need to go back, you can always go back to the home page, and if you need to find a different scope, you can find it within the home page. All right. So hopefully everyone learned a little bit more about STEMscopes than you might have known before. But if you ever have questions, feel free. You can reach out to the Office of Science. And once again, my name is Papillon Little, K5 Science Coordinator, and I have just presented to you the resource STEMscopes that we use here in APS. And we will see you in the schools.